All right, welcome back, honor students. We are going to be working on the body paragraphs of your um, analysis essay, your TDA, for the book Refugee. You should have your introduction outlined already with your hook, your book summary portion, and your thesis sentence. Now it's time to get into the three different body paragraphs. And each body paragraph is going to focus on a different character in a different part of the book because that's what the question is asking for, the three-part story structure. And I'm going to go through one body paragraph to give you an example of what it should look like. And then you are going to write your own after this as using this as a model. So what I have here is my paragraph for the Joseph story. And let me remind you that my thesis is about how survival often depends on making sacrifices. Okay, so I'm going to go into the Joseph story and I'm going to find evidence that shows how someone made a sacrifice in order for survival to occur. Okay, and before I do that, let me highlight this green super fast. So what I've done here is I've written it and then I've highlighted it because I want you to see how much green I have compared to pink. Just kind of look at the colors right now. You don't have to worry about the words. Notice there's more green than pink. The green is my original thinking, what came out of my brain and my thinking about the book, the story, the theme that I've chosen, and that I'm talking about the evidence that I've selected. The pink is where I've cited evidence. So I've got two examples from the book that are embedded within this paragraph. It's important, I want you to see that you should have about twice as much green as you should have pink. I want you to have, I want to see more of your original thinking than I see evidence, okay? Because when your TDA is graded, what's going to really count most is the green part, your original thinking. Anyone can copy evidence, okay? I'm not saying that's not important. Anyone can copy evidence, but only you can come up with your original thinking about that evidence. So that is what is most important with argument writing like this, okay? So I'm going to probably, you hear me say that a few times before I'm done with this video. So let's go to the first part of the paragraph. You have to have a topic sentence, okay? And your topic sentence should, of course, identify which story you're going to be writing about and kind of lead us into how that theme is present in that story. So I'm going to read mine to you. It says, as a refugee, Joseph learns he must make sacrifices in order to help his sister, Ruthie, survive. Tragically, he makes the ultimate sacrifice by offering himself up to the Nazis in place of his sister. He is eventually sent to a concentration camp and dies. So what I did there is I just kind of did a quick summary of the sacrifice that I found, because that's my theme, in his story. I did a little summary, a paraphrase, what happened in about 3 sentences. Okay, so a topic sentence can be more than one sentence. It doesn't have to just be one. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to share the evidence that proves that this is true, that proves that this is a theme for this part of the book. So notice how I introduce my evidence. Remember, anything pink is evidence. I put in the final chapter, so I'm kind of telling the reader where this is located. So that's a nice little transition. Then I put Ruthie explains to Mahmoud on page 315. So this is important. When you're citing evidence, you need to include the page number, and this is one way to do it. I'm going to show you a different way in a second. So you can introduce it with the page number, comma, quotation mark, capital letter. I will repeat this again. When you're putting evidence in a sentence, you put a comma before the quote, start the quote, and then you always start the quote with a capital letter. It's just like the beginning of a sentence, okay? So I said in the final chapter, Ruthie explains to Mahmoud on page 315, quote, And when one of those soldiers said one of us could go free and the other would be taken to a concentration camp, Joseph said, "Take me." There's the sacrifice. He gave up his own life for his sister. So, what I'm going to do next, I'm going to talk about that, my analysis. I said, this aha moment, notice how I use a signpost. You can do that if you want to, that'd be great. This aha moment clearly shows how survival is dependent on sacrifice. Alan Gratz, remember that's the author, it's good to refer to the author. Alan Gratz left this major realization for the reader until the resolution of the book. Notice how I'm using literary terms like resolution. Perhaps he wanted to emphasize how, at times, refugees' dire circumstances force them into making life or death choices by saving it for the end. And my thinking is there, well, he saved that until the conclusion. That's the very end of the book, kind of this big aha moment. It's like he wanted people to really notice this. That's my analysis, my original thinking. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of what I think. Now, I'm not done. I have another piece of evidence. Additionally, notice that transition word. Ruthie goes on to explain about her family, comma, quote, capital letter. They died so I could live. Do you understand? They died so all these people could live. And this is how I'm going to cite this evidence. I'm put it in parentheses, page 316, parentheses, period, end quote. So notice there's two ways to cite evidence. You can introduce it with the page number or you can end it, but make sure that when you type it, it looks just like this with the parentheses before the period and before the end quote. Now the green part is my analysis of this piece of evidence, my original thinking. This shows that by sacrificing himself, Joseph ultimately saves more lives beyond his death because Ruthie lives a long life and has many children and grandchildren. When Ruthie shows Mahmoud her walls covered with pictures of all her family members, the reader knows that Joseph did not die in vain. So again, that's my original thinking about the quote. I'm just kind of thinking about it and telling the reader, that's you, what I think about that, what I think about when I read that part of the story. That's a very touching, very powerful moment in the story. So it's time for a closing sentence. A good way to close it, this is one way, there's many ways to close it, but I put in summary. You could put in conclusion, you could put finally. There's different ways to transition, but you should transition into your closing sentence. And this is just my final thought. Ruthie cherishes Joseph's choice to sacrifice himself for her own survival. Okay, she cherishes this. This is what she's explaining to Mahmoud with the evidence that I put in this paragraph. So that's also analysis. So all the green, when you type yours, I want yours to, the proportion should be similar, a little pink and a lot of green. And you're going to set up each of your 3 paragraphs in your body just like that. So the next one would be the Isabel story, and the final one would be the Mahmoud story. It's going to take a while to type the body paragraphs. That's why you have the weekend to work on this, so that you will have that extra time built in. All right. So go ahead to your organizer, start with Joseph because he comes first in the book, and think about your theme. And you want to find some really good evidence. When you're picking evidence, be very thoughtful because you have to talk about it. If you just pick a random piece of evidence, you're not going to have much to say. And that's where your analysis, you're going to have a hard time analyzing. Pick something like I picked that is something you can really, really talk about in your paragraphs. Okay, so be really thoughtful about the evidence. Find 2, okay, and then you can start to think about the analysis and how you're going to put your paragraphs together. All right, that's the end of this video.